All right, Jim, thanks. Now we want to bring in NBC 10 legal analyst Enrique L1 Latoison. And we just heard, Enrique, Bruce Castor when Rosemary spoke with him saying he wasn't surprised. What's your take on this? Do you think it was pretty unusual that they made the decision and then he walked right out of prison?
Well, we kind of got a little window into this when the Supreme Court picked up two issues. The one issue being whether or not Mr. Cosby unofficially relied on that and gave up his Fifth Amendment right, which we talked about today, and this is the thing that got overturned. And the second issue was whether or not this many people that were able to testify in the second case, which was 5 additional victims, whether or not that was allowed. The Supreme Court never got to that issue. They only talked about issue number 1. So it is unusual when the Supreme Court eventually overturns a case. When the trial court ruled in one way, the Superior Court went along with the trial court, and then when it got to state Supreme Court, they said, no, this is wrong, we're overturning this. So, it really came down to whether or not somebody can rely on a prosecution's comments and things that they were saying to then give up your Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And the court was very disturbed by this and decided that this is not allowed, and they therefore overturned this case.
Yeah, and Enrique, you and I have been at that Montgomery County courthouse for what? The first trial when it was a hung jury, the second trial when he was convicted, and then for sentencing. You've been with us for a lot of the commentary and insight into this. So you bring up the issue of these other women who testified in the second trial. First trial, just one other woman. Second trial, the prosecution was allowed to have 5 women testify about their experiences and encounters with Cosby. So we know in this case, the charges against Bill Cosby as it relates to Andrea Constand, they're done. What about the other women? I mean, I suppose if there's a claim out there that still was within the statute of limitations, that could move forward. Talk to us about it.
So because you and I were on those trials both of those times talking about this case, and I will say that anybody that still has a legal right to go after Cosby can still do that. This was a narrow issue. This only came down to Ms. Constand's case. Could you prosecute Bill Cosby for Ms. Constand's case? The court said no, you cannot, because he relied on what was told to him in reference to this case. He gave up his right to remain silent, and he went and he testified in a civil case that was then used against him in the trial. However, everyone else still has their rights, and any other person that wants to be able to prosecute him can still do so.
Enrique, as always, we're so glad you're with us. Thanks for your perspective on all of this. We appreciate you.
Bill Cosby just moments ago.
Let's bring in NBC 10 legal expert Enrique L1 Latoison live in our newsroom. So he cannot be tried on the charges involving Andrea Constand. We know that. Enrique, after today's ruling, what are the chances that we could see Bill Cosby in a courtroom again for any reason involving this piece?
Involving this case, not at all.
No,
I mean,
right.
The Supreme Court said that, you cannot retry him again. There was even this option being floated out there that maybe they could try him again but throw out the deposition. The Supreme Court said no to that. They said that he should have never been charged. They seemed to be kind of upset about the whole kind of bait and switch here where he relied on what the prosecutor said. And because he relied on it, a month later, he's now involved in a civil suit where he's given up his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. So no, he cannot be charged again, and this is over.
And we know, Enrique, this was a decision based on a procedural issue, right? Not on Bill Cosby's guilt or innocence. The high court didn't speak to that. So how does this happen after Cosby's already served 2 years in prison?
Well, right when he was found guilty, his defense did make a motion to ask that Mr. Cosby be left out of jail and not start serving a sentence until the appeal process went through. The judge at the time said, no, I'm not allowing you to do that. You need to report and you're going to start serving your sentence. Now, once that takes place, it takes a while for it to make its way through the court system. It has to go to Superior Court. It went to Superior Court. He lost there. There's motions, there's briefs, and then it got appealed to the state Supreme Court. There's also argument, motions, briefs. These things take a while. I mean, he's lucky to be done at this particular point, but these things go on for a long time. And when it came to a decision, they moved very quickly to let him out of jail. The decision came down, and he's out of jail right now.
NBC 10 legal expert Enrique L1 Latoison, you've been with us all the way through this case. Thanks so much for joining us.
And count on NBC 10 and NBC10.com. Also, our free app to guide you through the entire case from the beginning. You can go to the app or the website to go through the complete history and timeline of the Cosby case.
Our other top story that we're following today.
6:14, Bill Cosby waking up in his own bed for the first time in 2 years. He was released from prison yesterday. You watched it happen live here on NBC 10.
Yeah, we wanted to get a better understanding of the decision to let him go free. So we brought in our legal expert, Enrique L1 Latoison. Enrique, thanks for getting up early this morning to be here with us. We appreciate it. Let's talk about Bill Cosby and him saying that he was surprised to find out that he was getting out of prison. But how surprising really is this news to the legal community?
Well, there's about a 70-some page brief that people can find on your website. And when you read through it, I will tell you that it makes sense. I mean, I believe the Supreme Court made the right decision. They were very careful in breaking it down very slowly on how they came to that decision. There's some winners and there's some losers here in this decision. Winners for the Fifth Amendment right, your right to remain silent, your right to not incriminate yourself. Also, the winners actually for prosecution, power in this case, saying that what they do, you have to stand by it. And of course, the loser in this case is Miss Constant. She had to sit through 2 trials in this case, only to, win a conviction and all of a sudden for this to be overturned and for him to be released. But in the end, I think that they broke it down very clearly in that brief, and everyone should read that brief.
Let's look ahead to the future here. Former DA Bruce Castor made that deal that's at the center of all this, right? Will this decision to throw out the conviction make prosecutors, say, more hesitant to make deals like this in the future, you think?
Well, 2020's hindsight. And, Keith, this goes back at a time. This was before the Me Too movement. This was before this kind of progressive idea that was taking place and kind of going across the United States. And at the time, he didn't believe anyone would believe Ms. Constant. And as he said, him as the Minister of Justice, he believed by making this deal, he was still helping Ms. Constant out. He said he didn't believe there was enough to prosecute him, but he wanted her to get some form of justice. So that's why he made the deal. Now, of course, years later, things changed, the environment changed, and, Mr. Cosby ultimately was tried twice to get a conviction.
So what's next for Bill Cosby? I mean, he can't face charges in this case, but could he face charges from any other accusations made by other accusers if the statute of limitations hasn't run out on those?
Aaron, you're correct. Supreme Court said you cannot try him in reference to the Constant case. You can try him in reference to other things or other issues. Other jurisdictions can still come after him if he's still within the statute of limitations. So I believe Ms. Constant was one of the few, if not the only person that was still within that statute of limitations. He was tried only and charged within a week before the statute of limitations ran out. But of course, prosecutors across the United States will be looking to see if any of those other accusers still fall within the statute of limitations. And if they do, this Supreme Court case does not stop that prosecution from taking place.
Oh, interesting. All right, NBC 10 legal analyst Enrique L1 Latoison. Enrique, thanks for waking up this early for us. We always appreciate your insight.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning. 6:17 right now. We got to turn our attention here now to the holiday weekend. If you're planning to party this Sunday.
Attorney Gloria Allred, who represented many women who spoke out against Bill Cosby, says she is still optimistic despite the court's decision.
It was really surprising. I was concerned at oral argument when I heard the questions that the justices were asking. I didn't feel that it would bode well for the ultimate decision. We will move on. It's always 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards in the women's movement. But the good news is we're moving forward. We're not going to be deterred.
All right, let's bring in NBC 10 legal analyst Enrique L1 Latoison in our newsroom. Enrique, thanks for being here. So we've known about this supposed deal with Bruce Castor for years. So why hasn't this been resolved before the trial even started? Why wasn't it resolved?
Well, we go back to Cosby 1. Cosby 1 was the first trial that was done the first time that ended in a hung jury. This issue was litigated extensively at that time. Both sides made their arguments and both sides really had a lot to dig in about this because the defense was trying to stop the trial from ever taking place. And the prosecution really hammered down on saying, hey, this wasn't a real agreement, he should not have relied on what Mr. Castor said. And that was kind of his fault when he gave up his Fifth Amendment right to testify in that civil case. However, the Supreme Court finally has the last word, and they are the final word. And they finally said, no, that was wrong. The trial should have never taken place. The deal that was put in place to begin with that made him give up his Fifth Amendment right is what should have done.
We know Bill Cosby's a free man. Is there any chance he heads back into a courtroom for anything involving another accuser if it falls within the statute of limitations?
Well, we know that this case with the Constant trial took place. He got arrested about a week or 10 days before the statute of limitations ran out. So there could be statute of limitations in other states with the other accusers that could still take place. But in this particular case, he's not coming back to court on this case. This is over. This is done. The Supreme Court said you cannot retry him, and that this is going to be overturned. Now, what takes place in other jurisdictions, I'm sure other prosecutors around the United States will be looking into that to see if anything fits in within the statute of limitations there.
NBC 10 legal expert Enrique Latoison. We didn't know we would need any further insight regarding Cosby's case. We thought that chapter was closed, but thank you for being here as it reopened today. Enrique Latoison.
And coming up in about 10 minutes, we're going to hear from one of the reporters who broke the Constant story. And you can count on NBC 10 to follow all the developments in this breaking story on air and online. You can read more about the case right now on NBC10.com and on the free NBC 10 app.